Welcome to Franklin Public Schools. In this video, we will talk about our school district budget, including funding sources and our spending. Our budget starts with our vision for each student attending FPS from preschool all the way through grade 12 and through age 22 for those whom their team has identified this instruction to meet their needs. We call it the portrait of a graduate, and it speaks to the essential skills we believe all students should demonstrate prior to graduation. We strive to develop confident and self aware individuals, empathetic and productive citizens, curious and creative thinkers, effective communicators and collaborators, and reflective and innovative problem solvers. First, let's explain the basics of how public schools are funded. Franklin Public Schools, like all others in the state, are funded through a combination of state and local contributions, which collectively create our operating budget. We also receive federal funds. This year, our operating budget totaled $65.7 million, which certainly sounds like a lot of money. But let's put Franklin's budget into perspective. Districts receive funding based on student enrollment, so per pupil spending is one way to compare spending across districts, regardless of their size. Currently, Franklin spends $14,276 per pupil, compared to the state average of $16,570. This puts Franklin in the 25th percentile in overall spending in the state, with 75% of Massachusetts districts spending more than Franklin does. These dollars are painstakingly budgeted to provide the best services we can with the funding we have. Before we talk more about our budget, let's first explain the term fiscal year. Our operating budget is 12 months long, but these 12 months do not align with the calendar year and are commonly referred to as a fiscal year. Franklin's fiscal year begins halfway through the calendar year on July 1st and ends halfway through the next calendar year on June 30th. It gets a bit confusing because the fiscal year is referred to by the calendar year in which it ends. For example, the 2021 fiscal year extends from July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021. We receive our operating funds on July 1st and must spend what we need from those funds over the next 12 months. Now let's talk more about our actual budget at Franklin Public Schools. Of this $65 million, 43% comes from the state of Massachusetts through Chapter 70 legislation. The remainder comes from your property taxes paid to the town of Franklin. This $65 million comprises our operating budget. The operating budget funds the everyday activities of our schools. You can think of the operating budget like your checkbook. It's what we use to pay all of our bills. Franklin generally receives about $1.4 million in federal entitlement grants. That means that based on our population of students who have special needs or might qualify for free or reduced meals, we would be entitled to this funding from the federal government. This grant money is used primarily for salaries and benefits for our educational support professionals in our pre-K through 12 inclusive classrooms and specialized programs. We also use this funding to pay the salary and benefits for tutors and interventionists who provide extra literacy instruction to our youngest learners and also to support professional development for our faculty and staff. Franklin uses revolving funds to support our fee-based programs. Typically, these funds are generated in one year for use in the following year and roll over from year to year. An example of a revolving fund includes our athletic revolving fund. Parents pay an athletic program fee for their student to participate in a particular sport. Athletic revolving funds support about 40% of the cost for athletic coaches, buses, game officials, uniforms, supplies, and equipment for the teams. And by the way, last year, Franklin High School received the Dalton Award for the second year in a row for having the top winning percentage in all varsity sports. Back to revolving funds, we also typically collect fees for busing, school meals, before and after school programs, and other district programming. Finally, the town of Franklin allocates capital funds to the school department each year. Capital funds generally come from the town's free cash each year. That's the amount that the town has left over from the whole budget at the end of the fiscal year. On average, the school department might receive about $700,000 of the $2 million in capital funds distributed townwide. Capital funds are used for large purchases each year, like Chromebooks for incoming freshmen at Franklin High School, or a new curriculum adoption at all of our elementary schools. It would also include improvements made to school buildings and fields. So back to our operating budget. Operating funding allows us to pay for salaries and benefits of our teachers, administrators, and support staff. We have various roles of staff that are needed to support students in the classrooms. The operating budget also allows us to pay for contracted service providers like our bus company, and this funding pays for all the supplies and materials students use while they are at school. Finally, this funding is used to pay other schools who help our students, whom their team has identified this instruction to meet their needs, to learn in another setting if we can't meet their needs in our public school setting. One more item to know. Operating funds have to be used in one single fiscal year, while capital, federal, and revolving funds can be used over several years. Additionally, the town of Franklin each year spends about $16 million to support the Franklin School District facilities, grounds, and maintenance costs, such as the salaries and benefits of our custodians in the schools, as well as utilities, snow removal, and other school maintenance costs. Now let's talk more about per pupil spending. It's important to note that in 2019, Franklin spent $14,276 per in-district student, which was $2,294 less than the state average. Approximately 42.6% pays for our largest expense, which is classroom teachers. The state breaks down this spending in 11 categories across which all district spending falls. Once again, we are discussing some pretty large monetary figures. A $65 million budget, an average per pupil expense of $14,276. All of these figures could lead people to believe that we have an abundance of funding, but in reality, we don't. If we look at some of our neighboring districts, we'll see that Franklin spends less than most of our nearby districts, and also less than districts that have demographics comparable to Franklin. You can find more of these comparisons on the Massachusetts Department of Education's website referenced here. As we said earlier, Franklin spends 14% less than the state average, which puts us in the 25th percentile in per pupil spending overall. That means that in any given year, on average, 75% of school districts in Massachusetts spend more on education than Franklin does. Yet, even with this level of spending, Franklin High School still ranks as the 54th best high school in the state, according to Boston Magazine in 2019. Franklin's Davis Thayer Elementary was designated a school of recognition for high growth. John F. Kennedy Elementary School was one of 6 schools in the state recognized by the U.S. Department of Education as a National Blue Ribbon School in 2020, based on overall academic performance and closing achievement gaps. Our arts programs have also demonstrated excellence, as 26 of our student musicians were accepted into the Massachusetts Central District Honors, and 3 have had ceramics work accepted into the Massachusetts Amazing Emerging Artists exhibit. We've made these great achievements. However, we've also lost many programs due to budget cuts over the years, like elementary and middle school foreign languages, music education, and band and string instrument programming at the elementary level. While many students experience musical success, we are not providing as strong a foundation in the performing arts as we could be when children are young and developing their skills and interests. Not having librarians at the elementary and middle levels impacts the currency of our text offerings, many of which are outdated and may include content that is not culturally proficient. We have limited language offerings compared with many school districts. Not having a strong world language program impacts our ability to meet our goals of the essential skills of our portrait of a graduate. Cutting the supply budget and charging fees shifts expenses to other sources, such as families and parent organizations, like our parent communication councils and booster groups. These cuts further impact our academic standing and add additional challenges as we strive to provide what kids need for their future. And even before the pandemic, students' lives have become quite complicated. They're juggling many classes along with extracurricular activities, jobs, college applications, and home life. And now, more than ever, there is a greater need for social emotional learning. As we look forward, we anticipate a return to school that involves students being present full-time and in person. In order to do this, we'll use pool testing to screen for the presence of COVID-19 for some time. Vaccinations hold promise for learning that looks more normal. We know, however, that the pandemic has had a major impact on students who are expressing additional social emotional learning needs. We also anticipate the need to personalize learning for more students who may be experiencing varying degrees of academic gaps. Lastly, we anticipate that the look of teaching and learning will be forever changed as the need for remote learning has fundamentally transformed education. We must continue to invest in supports, both personnel and hardware, that allow for the continued meaningful integration of technology in our curriculum. We strive to be the best we can with the funding we have, but when 75% of districts spend more than Franklin does, it is difficult to be competitive and to fund our most critical needs. But what if we spent the state average of $16,570 per pupil? Let's take a look at what that might equate to. With 4,800 students in our district at the state average of $16,570 per student, that would be an additional $15 million in our operating budget. What might we do with an additional $15 million? We would be able to invest in our critical needs. Rather than recite them all here, we'll let you choose to pause this video to carefully read them all. We are a large and complex organization with many rules, regulations, and procedures that guide our actions, and we continue to comply with many unfunded mandates. In the end, we simply cannot be wasteful in our financial decisions and our actions. Every day, we make decisions about what we can and cannot afford based on our priorities. The Franklin School Committee sets the vision and mission for the district, and the superintendent aligns the district's strategic improvement plan and Franklin's portrait of a graduate with that vision. Every dollar we spend is critical to our success, so we are careful in how we allocate our resources to align with our portrait of a graduate. We are efficient and effective, and we make the best use of the resources we have. We take tremendous pride in maximizing our resources for the benefit of all of our students. Follow the budget process and make note of the upcoming important dates to remember. We hope you found this video helpful in learning about our budget. For more detailed information, you can visit our website at www.franklinps.net. Thanks for watching.